Alright. I have just gotten back from the cinema. It's December 4th. It's the release night of Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City in Britain. And I have just sat through an experience. The following video will be a completely unscripted thoughts and feelings video regarding that movie. Now, let me ask you a question. If somebody gave you $20 million and said to you, faithfully recreate the events of Resident Evil in a way that will please and also resonate with fans, what would you do? I would look at the source material and very carefully weave a narrative following the plot line. You've got more than enough budget to do it with 20 million. Now, what does Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City do? For starters, it takes the plot of both Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 and kind of smashes them together. That's right, it smashes them together and decides to have them both playing out simultaneously with a lot of canon plot elements completely back to front and things just completely out of sync, while also filling the runtime itself with a lot of really, ham-fisted references to things that we saw in the game. It's almost like the director thought to themselves, okay, Resident Evil 2 Remake, that game that did really, really well a couple of years ago? How about we take scenes and iconic locations from that and throw them in there? Just throw them in there. And also have elements from the original Resident Evil and throw those in there as well. For reference, spoilers ahead for this video, by the way. We are going to be spoiling things. That's going to happen. The movie starts off some 10, 15, however many years before the events of either of the Resident Evil games I just mentioned. Claire and Chris are orphans in the Umbrella-run orphanage. The very same Umbrella-run orphanage that you see in Resident Evil 2 Remake. The one that you go to at Sherry. And pretty much Claire ends up wandering the halls at night, waking up and seeing Lisa Trevor, full on, green-skinned mutant wearing masks and faces of people. And then it seems to just randomly skip forward 20 years after that. And you end up in a moment where you've got Claire hitchhiking into town, getting a ride from the same truck driver at the beginning of Resident Evil 2 Remake, dress code and all. Dress code, what a way to say it. His outfit and all. The jeans, the trucker hat, the beard, everything. They take that truck driver and basically have Claire hitchhike a ride into town with him. Now, she arrives in Raccoon City after hitting the same dead body and all, or the same woman in the road that they do in 2 Remake. You're going to notice this throughout this discussion. It's a lot of, oh yeah, can we copy that scene from the game? Can we copy that scene? Can we copy that scene? Yeah, it does a lot of that. Now, she arrives in Raccoon City, upon which we are introduced to a rookie Leon Kennedy asleep, sprawled over a bar in what is essentially a small town diner. Jill, Chris, and Wesker are all there. Wesker is incredibly out of character. He's laughy and jokey and really just a smart ass. Nothing like the Wesker that you see in game. Chris is loyal to Umbrella to a degree because of his upbringing while he was there with them, and you will end up seeing a lot of that as the film kind of goes on. Now, one thing that this movie does right, surprisingly, is recreating, as much as I've just criticised it for recreating scenes and just slamming them into the runtime to almost pad things out and go, hey, I get that reference. When it does it really well. From the truck driver coming into Raccoon City, eating the cheeseburger on his dashboard, to the Umbrella Orphanage in Resident Evil 2, to characters going off to the Spencer Mansion, to a lot of the ties to Umbrella, you'd think to yourself, right, with that 20 million budget that I mentioned, we can recreate these scenes lovingly. There's a wonderful, wonderful moment where Leon is in the RPD. Leon is a complete joke, by the way, in this movie, and we're going to get to that. But yeah, there's a scene in the RPD main hall where Leon is napping on the front desk, and you get like a wide shot of the hall and everything in it, really lovingly recreated. There's also another shot later on where they go into the front hallway of the Spencer Mansion, looking really nice there, and also the front entrance of the RPD itself, gate and all, very well created. And you think to yourself, they've got the essence of the scene, it looks it, but outside of looking it and having that love and care and attention to detail, there's so much missing in the characterization. Anyway, Leon really does just play the role of the clumsy, almost, shall we say, really borderline incompetent, really out of his depth rookie. Like, yes, he was a rookie cop and he was out of his depth in the original game, but it really shows here. Like, they make him, incompetent's too harsh a word, but they make him almost clumsy. He's almost that clumsy rookie cop that ends up having to defer back to Chief Irons on more than one occasion. By the way, Chief Irons is not an absolute lunatic in this. He's just a run-of-the-mill, short-tempered, typical police chief that yells at people, which completely out of character there. Leon is Leon as such in some of his mannerisms and his way of speech. The way he talks and the quippy one-liners are there, but he just doesn't come across as competent. He makes silly mistakes. He ends up being saved by Claire on multiple occasions. Claire pulls a lot of the weight in this movie, by the way. Anyway, we'll get to that. So, the general crux of things, it's Chris, Wesker, Jill, and Richard from Bravo Team are all essentially filling the role of Alpha Team in this movie. They get sent off to investigate a disturbance at the Spencer mansion, which two other cops, two really throwaway, unimportant cops that you only see for about 2 minutes at the beginning, are sent to investigate, and they lose contact with them. Those two random cops are basically Bravo team, and then you've got Chris, Jill, Wesker, and Richard composing Alpha team, who are then sent in by helicopter, with Brad Vickers as well. Brad Vickers is helicopter pilot. So you've got them investigating Spencer Mansion. At around the same time, Claire gets into the city centre and ends up essentially bumping into Leon and Chief Irons, who tried to escape but ends up being forced to go back into the police station when he finds out that Umbrella has cordoned off the city. He finds this out when he's driving through said city, and he ends up at a blockade where pretty much Umbrella soldiers are shooting people, and they're pretty much led by Hunk. He's not named, but you see him. He's the one leading them. Anybody that goes near the checkpoint just gets blown away. So you've got the events of Resident Evil 1 loosely happening, while Claire and Leon are barricaded in the police station with Chief Irons. Claire, by the way, has come back to the city years later after basically fleeing the Umbrella Orphanage, because she received a videotape from Ben, the journalist, saying that there was something wrong in the city and Umbrella was up to no good, so she came back to investigate. Another point that's really, really off the mark here: Raccoon City is not Umbrella's main base of operations. Not at this point in the timeline, at least, in the movie. It was formerly the base of operations. And many years on now, they've pretty much are in the latter stages of abandoning Raccoon City. They've used most of its, resources. They've pretty much done all they can with it, and have packed up shop and moved to a new headquarters, and only have a skeleton crew basically manning the Spencer Mansion and running a few small experiments there. Raccoon City is a half-abandoned, desolate ghost town with a lot of weird happenings, disappearances, people dying, that kind of thing. You later find out that that's because the T-virus, which was true to the canon, has leaked into the water supply, which Ben finds out, obviously informs Claire about, and then she comes to the city. So you've pretty much got a point where Chris, Jill, Wesker, Richard are investigating the mansion, while a lot of the infected people and the handful of people left that are cordoned off in the city are converging on the police station and slowly starting to turn. So you've got the two events playing out at once. A zombie kills Brad, or bites Brad, who then loses control of the helicopter as we assume he was trying to take off, and crashes it into the front window of the Spencer Mansion. Wesker, who is completely out of character in every conceivable way, was not an Umbrella spy to begin with, but had been contacted by an informer who wanted to expose Umbrella's bio-experiments a few months prior, and had been secretly sending him messages via an oldie late 90s sort of PDA device. So this person pretty much orders him via PDA when he gets to the mansion to investigate, and his betrayal of Alpha Team is so weak-willed, it's beyond belief. It's basically, I've been receiving messages from this informant for a few months. I'm gonna go, and if you don't come with me, Jill, then I'm gonna leave you here to die. And because they've got this weird buddy-buddy relationship going on, and it's pretty much implied it might well be a romantic relationship, that is basically Wesker's betrayal, the fact that he won't go and help the others investigate, because at that point Chris and Richard are cut off in the mansion and been swarmed by zombies, he's going to flee and save himself, and that's his great betrayal. So, yeah, Richard gets eaten. Chris ends up having to fight off a load of zombies while Jill is piecing stuff together. William Birkin is in this as well. He's the head of the Umbrella, essentially, laboratory and orphanage that I mentioned earlier, who was basically overseeing it all and taking care of Chris and Claire when they were kids. He's not got this really, really sinister sort of, or mad scientist attitude at all. He really is just your average Joe. He gets a message from Umbrella headquarters via the phone saying that they're going to level the place because there's been a viral leak, which Chris and everybody finds out when they've gone to the Spencer estate. He tries to flee the city with Annette and Sherry. Annette isn't a researcher in this, by the way. She has no clue any of this is going on. And Sherry is so one-note and devoid of personality that she might as well not be there. So, yeah, I'm only scratching the surface here. Like, the things it does right in terms of recreating scenes and references, that's all good. But you've got to make the characters feel believable and have depth, and really just make it feel like it's Resident Evil. It's got surface level substance and a few moments where it really does shine, where it feels like it's Resident Evil. When they actually go into the Spencer mansion and they start investigating for a brief moment, that is pretty good. When you see all the shots of the RPD, it's very good. When you see the moments of the zombies crawling around the streets of Raccoon City, again, very good. But it's just... is it better than the Hollywood offerings by W.S. Anderson? I'd honestly say it is. For being able to for when it actually nails the moments of Resident Evil where it's going with the scenes that are pretty much recreated from games or entries in the series note for note. It does that well enough to actually feel reasonably good. But you're only clearing the low bar that is the Hollywood adaptations. And the Hollywood adaptations are so off the mark that it wouldn't take anything to really clear those anyway. So, yeah. I mean, if we were to keep going through the plot here, I mean, I'm really condensing things. So the zombies pretty much swarm the police station. So Leon and Claire have to escape with, regular old pedestrian cheap irons. He leads them back to the Umbrella Orphanage, which is obviously a part of Claire's past, while we see Chris been saved by Jill when he's been swarmed by zombies in the Spencer mansion. She says Wesker's betrayed us, and they have to pretty much escape the city. So, this is the point where things converge. Irons leads Claire and Leon to the Umbrella Orphanage. Claire has a few past flashbacks, bumps into Lisa Trevor, who warns them to be quiet in her croaky, sort of like almost inhuman voice, because she's, still lurking around the orphanage years after it's been shut down. And there's something moving on the ceiling. Surprise, surprise, it's a licker. The licker CGI is really good, actually. Pretty damn decent. The licker kills Irons. Then Lisa Trevor fights off the licker and kills it. And then Leon and Claire take a secret passage through the Umbrella Orphanage to the Spencer estate, where they bump into Chris and Jill, who are pretty much, trying to escape themselves at that point. They find out there's a secret train underneath the mansion that leads down an underground passage out of the city, but they've only got another hour until Umbrella blows the place sky high. And that is when things kind of start to really move at an absolute breakneck pace. Wesker, who kind of disappeared on his own, we find out is under orders from this random informant to get hold of G-virus samples and uncover what William Birkin and Umbrella have been doing. He ends up in an altercation with Birkin where he shoots him. Annette then refuses to hand over the G virus samples. It never states which one it is, so it's T/G. Wesker shoots her, and then pretty much gets shot himself when Jill converges on the lab in essentially a friendly fire incident. He dies. Then Chris, Jill, Leon, and Claire pretty much take Sherry with them and go to escape the city. You find out a short moment later, after they've left the scene, that Birkin injected himself with the virus and is mutating into his Resident Evil, kind of G. Birkin form. He attacks Leon. Oh, sorry, wrong person. He attacks Chris, who then, is almost on the verge of being killed. Then Claire comes in with a moment to spare, shoots Birkin, mortally wounds him, and then Chris lands the finishing blow. They flee to the underground train. They get the train rolling and begin on their way. Birkin pretty much mutates and attacks them again in like his giant four-armed Birkin Phase 2, form. And pretty much can't be stopped. Nearly kills Chris. Is about to corner pretty much everybody. And then Leon just turns up with a rocket launcher. Wabam, boom, blows up Birkin. They escape by... they get out through the underground passageway. You see an Umbrella satellite that pretty much says no survivors, Raccoon City destroyed, lab destroyed. And then it just says Resident Evil on the screen, and then credits roll. And then at the end of the first bit of the credits, you see Wesker Wesker's pretty much getting out of a body bag and is on the floor and blind. A woman turns up saying, your eyes were what we took from you in order to save you. It was the cost of saving you, and there will be other side effects. She hands him sunglasses to ease the pain in his eyes, and the camera pans over to an Asian lady in a trench coat. He asks who she is. She says she's Ada Wong. Credits roll. So it's pretty much sequel baiting already. Now, we've talked plenty about the breakneck pace of the plot, how things are just smashed together, how there are some good references but no substance. Let's quickly talk about what it did right and what it did wrong. So, what did it do right? It showed that in its budget, because let's be honest, 20 million is not a lot these days. They showed that they could recreate scenes, set pieces, and iconic moments from the franchise, at least on a surface level, and have them at brief moments show some genuine potential. So why, in my opinion, didn't they just follow the canon plot? They showed that they could create those scenes lovingly through the way they showed the Spencer Mansion, the RPD, and some of the skeletons of some of the key scenes playing out, even though some of them weren't necessarily in the right canon orders. So why didn't they just do it properly? and stick to the script and just go for it. This is essentially a small budget project comparatively to a lot of stuff. So would they have really lost out by just going all in and following Resident Evil's canon? Maybe just, potentially following 1 or following 2, instead of trying to smash elements of 2 together, fill it with references and scenes recreated from, both Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 in a really jumbled, convoluted mess. And basically, a convoluted mess. Second is, the second is going to be a negative, and that's how out of character a lot of people feel. Lesser characters like Brad and Richard don't really have discernible personalities. They're in it too briefly. Sherry doesn't feel like she really serves a purpose. Annette's one and done. Birkin's just there to... He's there at the beginning when he's running the Umbrella Orphanage. Then it flashes to the present day where he's trying to escape with Sherry and Annette. And then you see him right near the end, just in time for the transformation and the big boss fight. So he doesn't serve much of a purpose. Claire really does have a lot of the background, from flashbacks in the orphanage to meeting up with Ben. I glossed over that point. They find Ben in the RPD. He ends up being bitten by a zombie and dying, so that's a thing. A lot of the plot is focused around Claire. Claire is probably the most in character of them all, but it's a very low bar. Like I said, Leon is remotely in character as far as his one-liners and personality stuff goes. Chris is hellishly out of character. He's at odds with Claire, estranged from Claire for having left the city and abandoned the orphanage, and not coming around to seeing that Umbrella's, quite evil until after he's been through Spencer Mansion and seen zombies and seen, Richard get killed and that kind of thing. He's really off the mark. Ada's basically there as sequel bait. Wesker just couldn't be any more off the mark if we tried. So yeah. Been horrendously out of character, and smashing scenes together was what it did wrong. And pretty much when it did create those scenes, it did it in a way that was at least aesthetically pleasing and had a lot of love and attention to detail. So I know when I wake up from the slight, feeling of nostalgia from this thing, as misguided as it is, I'll probably view it in a bit more of an unforgiving light. But really, even as a really dedicated fan, I can't give this more than a 5 out of 10. It's mediocre at best. It surpasses the painfully low bar that are the completely off-the-mark Hollywood adaptations with, Alice. Because it at least tries to recreate the canon scenes. Even though they are hellishly misplaced and out of order in a lot of instances, it at least tries. It tries. So for that alone, minus a few scenes in Resident Evil Apocalypse, but we won't go there, it's going to get a middle-of-the-road 5 out of 10. The character's been out of character in some instances, and just the way the plot was just all over the place brings it down. Like I said, mediocre at best. And sequel baiting with Ada at the end there, and Wesker coming back to life, you've got to be able to make your movie sell in order to be able to sequel bait. And we'll see about that, won't we? Because I'm probably been one of the more forgiving people as far as this is concerned. And I know there will be a lot of people that are really unforgiving with this movie. Will it break even? I don't know. Will we see anything worthwhile from it? I don't know. If you want a more coherent video on this that's not just me giving you half an hour of my thoughts, let me know in the comments. If you want me to elaborate on anything, I'll happily do so in the comments section. Honestly, give it a try and go see for yourself. It's not bad for a cheap cinema ticket, but don't be expecting too much. And now that it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to sit here and reflect upon what I have seen a bit more. And just a quick point while I'm here as well. I have watched this, like I said, on release night. The first screening at one of my local cinemas. The screen had a capacity of, I believe, somewhere between 80 to 100 people. The first screening on release night. And there was only about maybe 10 or 11 of us in the whole screen. Not only that, but half of the cinemas within reasonable distance of me aren't even showing this. So maybe, just maybe, give it some support, because goodness am I wondering how well it's going to do. Anyway, that was a bit of an aside. But yeah, we have experienced this. There's definitely no going back. A mediocre experience, but definitely one that it was okay watching. Anyway, let's get to our outro, shall we? Because I'm sure some of you will be eager to experience this for yourselves. Yes, an experience, that is what we'll call it. So thank you very much. I have been Silver, your host. Have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or night, and I will see you again very soon. Take care, guys.